Top of the morning to you. It's Terry of the Jim and Terry Show, minus the Jim, who's still on holidays. What's cooking in the Hobbit Hole studio this morning? Well, I'm very curious about polls, about things that are surveys of the public opinion, about where opinions come from. Where do our beliefs in what is right and wrong, true and false come from, and what does it look like when you put questions to the general public, questions that have measurable, provable answers, and find out where people stand on some issues? At stake this morning is what I would call, well, it's more evident in the United States than Canada, I think, but it is becoming an issue in Canada. We seem to be following on the coattails of our larger cousins to the south, and that is the coattail that says you can believe just about anything that Trump says. Nothing will dissuade you from voting for Trump. And I am very curious and very concerned about that kind of polarization. So I wondered, to what extent is this also true in Canada? Are you going to vote Conservative? Are you going to vote for Pierre Poilievre despite the nose in front of your face? That is the question. So I'm referring right now to an Ecos Politics poll, and I think it's released today. So it's, I'm finding it on their homepage on ecospolitics.com. And it's just a survey, right? It's a poll, so you can take it for whatever it's worth. For me, it has some interesting conclusions, and I wanted to maybe start with the conclusion. No, I should build the case, shouldn't I? So I should go back and look at the details and take a look at, the title is Recent Shifts in Public Outlook on Canada and the World. Subtitle, A Dark and Divided Outlook, by Frank Graves, I think, who runs the Ecos polling data website and publishing of the material. And to be truthful and honest, polls I take with a grain of salt to a cowlick of salt. Depends on who's doing it, when, why, the questions asked. There's so much, the population surveyed, where you did your survey, all kinds of variables, and you try to eliminate the outliers, the things that are fringe, and use data that is more predictably reliable. And so you have to sort it all out and analyze it. But I thought this was well worth it because of my concerns that Trump could literally shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. And that seems to be true with 4 indictments, 91 charges, and a threat to, assassinate, kill the former Joint Chief of Staff, Mark Milley. These kinds of things should not be taken lightly, but we take them lightly because you get away with saying so much on social media. You can say whatever you want. Nobody holds you to account because it's social media. It's not a reliable source. It is just what it is. Say what you want. You don't have to back it up. You don't have to have facts to make any kind of claim on social media. So I'm very concerned about social media and the impact of where you get your news. And I've maintained this with my good friend Jim, who's inside my head, living rent-free in the Hobbit Hole studio. Jim, a shout out to you. Hope your holidays are going well. I'm very concerned about this kind of stuff. So I browsed through, taking a look at this recent shift in Canada. And I look at the general outlook, and they seem to want to look at things, the early stages of the pandemic, characterized by marked improvements in both short and medium financial outlook, was at a 10-year high. However, it seemed to end through COVID, and for obvious reasons to most of us. But the majority of Canadians didn't see such a big downturn. We weathered the storm with support from federal policies, provincial policies. But here's the kicker in this one. In the general outlook, the majority of Canadians do not realize that Canada is not in a recession. We're not, despite what you may feel and may believe in your personal. The data for Canada as a whole is saying we're not in a recession. In fact, Our inflation rate has maintained low, at times lower than the United States in their recovery. So what can we do with this attitude? Well, we can find it in a connection with a level of mistrust and disinformation, meaning the more you are vulnerable to misinformation, the more convinced you are that the sky is falling. Does fear sound right? I was listening to a podcast about spirituality and talking about Islam and Satan, and it seems that fear-mongering, whether it's from the right, as in the Christian right, or from the Islamic right, the fundamentalists on any religion, tend to stoke fear and look for the devil in every corner and behind everything that's not going as they think it should. So I'm wondering if this is true in the political realm. So I look at things that might be markers or indicators of things. A question was asked. Thinking over the next 5 years, do you think your personal financial situation will be better off or worse than it is today? Well, those who think it's going to be worse off are about 30. About the same, that you're sort of chugging along, about 30. That you're better off, about 36. So more people are tending to think you're better off, but it's maybe sliding a bit, and those who think it's worse off are on an upward trend. So if I look at the graph lines, downward trend is better off, upward trend is worse off. The same is, strangely, about the same, about 30%. So that's just kind of curious and interesting. I would probably go within the same. I don't see a particularly downward trend where I'm going to be worse off. That's just my neck of the woods, and you would respond differently to this question if it were you. So it's all personal. Perceived level of risk. Risk of what? Risk of things not going well. Risk of China. Fear of Russia. What are your top concerns? Well, a lot of them are concerned with China. Second most concerned, Russia. Third most concerned are about death from overdoses and drugs. And I think we've all read news in the West Vancouver, especially about opioid addictions and overdoses. Anybody concerned about antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections? Well, 30% sort of there. How about getting in a car accident? Are you more fearful of that? Well, that's about 26% of the respondents are ranking that one pretty high. Interesting to see what we fear. Plane crashes, getting into plane crash is the least of your worries. Trust. Has trust fallen? Trust in the federal government? Well, yeah. We're approaching what might be called a crisis in trust. Can we connect that crisis in trust to other perceptions? Attitudes towards globalization. Yeah, if you're pessimistic about your own outlook in life, chances are you're in the group that also believes that globalization is an imminent and large danger or threat to you personally, to what you believe. Secondly, those who have a positive outlook or optimistic towards global wellness, I guess, and the progress and prosperity shared amongst countries of the world through collaborative efforts at the UN, at the EU, that has taken what I would call a precipitous drop. So we are more fearful about globalization, more looking for the devil around every corner, fear mongering. Foreign interference, well, we suspect that there might be a party alignment. So Echoes asked the question, to what extent do you believe foreign interference is a serious threat? On a national level, it's about 60%. 6 in 10 Canadians say it's a concern. On the Liberal side, it's half, 5 in 10. Conservatives, it's 8 in 10 look to foreign interference as a serious threat. So it's kind of interesting to me that Liberal, Conservatives, NDP are all at the 50, and the outlier is Conservatives who are up. That's kind of interesting to me. So there's a political bent towards how you perceive things. Let's take a look at foreign interference. China, well, 8 in 10 Canadians believe China's likely to have done things in Canada. Russia is about 60%, United States about 30%. This is just what people perceive. Iran, 22%, India, 16%. Well, now we know that India, the evidence seems to be, and Jagmeet Singh has confirmed his reading into the intelligence, that it looks like India was up to no good in Canada. Killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil puts you right on the fringe of tolerable actions in a democracy. So to what extent is India going to have fallout for this? Well, let's see. Cutting off economic ties to Russia and or China. Well, regarding China, it's about 44% of Canadians say let's cut everything. In terms of Russia, 66% say cut everything. So there's a strong anti-Russia sentiment in Canada. But the one that got me most, and the one I'll wrap up on, is disinformation. How do your views on life, on living, on optimism or fear relate to disinformation? Well, it seems that disinformation available to your viewing audience has gone up considerably. And what do we link it to? Well, let's take a look at correlation between types of disinformation. If you tend to believe that COVID vaccines alter your DNA, that puts you in a group that also believes that greenhouse gas emissions are not a problem. It also believes that COVID-19 vaccines can cause infertility and that deaths are being intentionally hidden by the government. That same group cohort is about 20 to 25% of the respondents. What does it mean? Well, it comes down to this. If you're going to vote, your intention to vote seems to put you CPC. 84% of those who responded they would vote for CPC are also the highest influenced by disinformation. The least, the NDP and Greens. The Jim and Terry Show, summing it all up for you. How you vote may speak more about what you think than you wish us to know. Bye-bye for now.